Hello, everyone. This is Vijay Maharjan at Panhandle Research Center in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And today I'll go over some highlights from two-year field trials on nitrogen management in winter wheat across the state. Nebraska winter wheat production was a little over a million ton last year from the area of about 850,000 acres. So winter wheat is a big part of our economy, and I hope you have seen this. This is UNL guideline for nitrogen management in winter wheat. Nitrogen algorithm therein accounts for residual soil nitrogen before planting, as well as prices of grain and fertilizer nitrogen. For example, if nitrogen cost, let's say, 40 cents per pound, and grain is for $6.4, then the algorithm suggests for 72 pounds nitrogen. Of course, this recommendation suggestion assumes for your goal of 75 or less bushels, and if your potential is higher, such as in irrigated systems or in rain-fed eastern part of the state, then additional 20 pounds is recommended. And if solely grain protein is a target, then 20 pounds for every unit increase in protein is recommended. So current this nitrogen algorithm for winter wheat production was prepared in 70s. And several progresses have been made in cultivars and management practices. And of course, climate conditions have changed since then. So all these changes, I assume, have likely shifted the nitrogen requirements for the crop. And therefore, we thought it's timely for a new study, new data collection in order to improve this current nitrogen management. And also, in recent years, we have seen the reports how lower average protein content has been um, out there. For example, in 16, it was around 11%. In 17, also around 11% compared to preceding 2.5 averages of 12.5 or 12.3, all over 12% nitrogen grain protein. All these reasons prompted us to this field trial with the objective to evaluate the effects of different nitrogen rates and application timing on grain yield as well as protein content of wheat across the state. Of course, we also have been evaluating the potential use of crop sensors. I wouldn't be presenting data on crop sensors, but you are welcome to write to me or give me a call if you want to learn more about that. So in year one, 2018, 2019, and the second year, 2019-20, field experiments were conducted under rain-fed conditions at 4 different research stations located across Nebraska: Enrick near Mead, Grant, H-Bell near Sydney, and Frick in Scottsbluff. These sites covers pretty well in Enrick to 14 inches in Scottsbluff. All these sites had the same experimental design, which included 2 cultivars, Ruth and Freeman, and then different combinations, different application timings. At Enric, due to the higher precipitation and better soil condition, the yield recommended 100% rate of nitrogen for Enrico was 80 pounds and 60 pound at other locations. Now we get on to the results of the trial. So first thing first, these 2 years when the trials were conducted, so if you recall year 1, 18-19, the precipitation, it was on the left, shows the departure from normal precipitation. So our 4 locations had a wetter year in year 1, and in contrast, drier than normal year. Here again is the same weather data in bar aggregated, and in year 1, all sites had a double-digit increase in precipitation than normally. One thing to notice is in Enric, even in a dry year, total precipitation was greater than that at other locations in a wet year. And because of that, still better in east, and hence higher nitrogen recommendation and also higher seeding rate. Different site years. Site names are given: Enric, Grant, year 18, meaning year 1, 18-19 season, and 19 refers to year 2, the season of 1920. So yield data is given in tons. The multiplier will be 15, so 4 tons per hectare would mean around 60 bushels of grain. So irrespective of cultivar, what we saw was Grant in year 1 had the greatest grain yield. It was over 90 bushels, non-irrigated. And in year 2, Enric had higher yield than any other sites. Year 1, we don't have data from Scottsbluff, Frick, because there we lost our crop to a series of hail damage in year 1. So at Grant and HPAL, the difference is the gain in grain yield in year 1 compared to year 2. That can be attributed to the growing season in year 1. So sufficient precipitation in year 1 did provide for daily crop water use at all the growth stages, and water availability is critical and for plant growth and photosynthesis, and subsequently we saw greater yield in year 1 at these 2 sites. At NREC, we didn't see the same effect, and that is primarily heat blight that caused yield loss in year 1. And therefore, there was no yield gain in year 1 and then in year 2, as was the case with Grant and HPAL. And for the same reason, NREC did not yield the highest among the sites in year 2, although it has a higher yield potential. So decline in yield across sites in year 2 compared to year 1 did lead to a higher grain protein content in year 2 over year 1. And overall in our data set, there was a strong negative correlation between grain yield and protein. So increased grain yield favored by adequate precipitation do leave minimal residual nitrogen in soil for lower grain protein content in year 1. Grain yield is very broadly reported to negatively correlate with grain protein content, specifically under higher yield and also a low soil nitrogen availability. Now looking at the grain yield and protein response to applied nitrogen rates in year 1, what we see is, and these are plotted for individual site, the regression analysis for yield response to nitrogen rate showed a significantly linear increase in yield with N rate at Grant and HPAL, and due to the infection of Fusarium head blight, the response was negative in case of NREC, more severely under higher applied nitrogen rates, and the linear regression of grain protein content against applied N sites. In year 2, regression analysis showed that there was a linear increase in grain yield with nitrogen rate at NREC and HPAL, but the slope of and then with respect to protein response, linear response, and as you can see, the protein content at all the N rates were much higher than in the year 1. It does appear significantly affected our grain yield and protein response to nitrogen application, and that was corroborated with this post-harvest soil test results that residual amino nitrogen than in year 1. So in a summary, winter wheat yield response wet here. We didn't see much advantage of nitrogen over fall except at one site here, and nitrogen application nitrogen did here, and in a dry year specifically we saw how grain protein was elevated in an inverse reciprocation to the reduced soil moisture. So weather affects so much for our yield response to nitrogen input. In a way, it's a known factor. Although we didn't see any differences among application timing and the yield, or the top dressing would give us some edge, so we can decide how much to apply, or does it worth to even add any in the number of tillers. So I would still suggest for split application rather than having all applied in fall. So another thing we noticed in our data was there was no plateauing in our yield response to applied nitrogen rate. So what does all this say? Do we need, certainly there is a room, possibly we can make it more robust by accounting for weather conditions, soil moisture in the spring, how the crop is doing in the early spring. We can also make it more robust, maybe by in target as well. That would be difficult to do, but But certainly we need more data to keep algorithm more robust, or maybe we can improve our algorithm with introducing some of the crop sensing. Like I said before, I'm not sharing the data from crop sensing work in this trial, but we do see potential of using crop sensing in order to optimize our nitrogen management, for doing some more work so that we can incorporate crop sensing as well in our nitrogen recommendation. With that, Agricultural Research Division for Wheat Innovative Fund and also Nebraska Wheat Board for sponsoring this work. This project wouldn't have been successful. Primarily Deepak Imire, who was a master's student on this project, and many other collaborators named here. My sincere thanks to them to make this project successful, and you are please welcome more in detail. Thank you.
All right, so Bijesh, we have a question there from Chris in the chat box if you want to address that.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for your time and attention. So Chris is asking, given the outlook for persistent drought, many do not apply the full recommended nitrogen to wheat, feeling there will be no return in regard to yield. Your thoughts? And I was also amazed to see how in a second year when it was dry, so minimal response to input. So in a way, our data do suggest or support this idea. If early on in the spring we don't see enough moisture in the soil, tillers, how many tillers had to come out had already come, and they look really minimal. Certainly our at least 4 site tier data show really little response to any input, but the case is then different for the rain-fed, but in the eastern part of the state, where even though it's dry land, but it's more like a rain-fed, they have still enough precipitation to see some response to input. So yeah, I do feel the same way, that, and that's why instead of applying everything all in fall, if you just give some basal dose in the fall so that you have more leeway in the spring to decide, if you cannot make money on yield, then at least we can save on input.
Do you feel that the a healthier plant will actually handle the drought better, though, if it is fertilized as if it was going to be a normal year?
Can you repeat that? Healthier plant?
Do you feel that if you still fertilize the wheat as you would normally, given a normal year, because a lot of times we have to pull that trigger before we really know what we have for drought. I've always thought that. I thought that the plant was probably healthier and probably may have taken the drought better. It's going to have higher protein, which you're probably not going to get compensated for in a dry year, because there probably won't be as large a premium because there'll be more protein around. But I just was wondering if you thought that the plant would probably endure the drought just because of its fertility.
Right, and some of the things like you yourself do, like we are testing some slow release type of fertilization this year. So probably not raising the rate, but applying it in using some available technology, some slow release things, so that we can have a more sustained level of mineral nitrogen throughout the season, so that on a happy day when moisture comes, there's still enough nitrogen for plant to uptake and grow.